This work of fiction is intended for mature audiences. It contains themes of psychological horror and violence presented in a restrained manner. All characters and events are entirely fictional. The narrative is not intended to glorify or encourage harmful behavior.
The air in the courtroom felt stale, thick with the scent of old wood and judgment. I shifted in my seat, the scratchy fabric of the too formal blazer I'd been forced to wear making my skin crawl. Beside me, Marco belched, a low, rumbling sound that made my teeth clench. The six of us sat like a gaggle of misbehaved children, our eyes darting between the stern-faced judge and the district attorney, who was glaring at us with contempt in her eyes. "You have, in my opinion, demonstrated a shocking lack of empathy," the judge said, his voice booming, "and a complete disregard for the dignity of others. Your actions, your reprehensible actions, towards the elderly patrons at the mall, they're unacceptable and will not be tolerated. I won't waste time sermonizing. The court is clear on this. You will each serve 24 hours of community service. Not at the park cleaning weeds or picking up trash, no. You will serve one day at the Hilltop Haven, a hospice home for the terminally ill. This community service will be continual for one 24-hour shift, no breaks. You will act as aides, feeding, cleaning, and caring for the residents' every need. Do I make myself clear?" I exchanged a horrified glance with Sarah, my best friend. 24 hours? With smelly old farts? It was worse than just being grounded. We'd been busted, yeah, but we hadn't been expecting this. We were bullies, sure, but we weren't bad kids, not really. We had our unique way of having fun. The other four, Marco, Chloe, Liam, and Emily, seemed equally stunned, though none of us dared talk back. We knew better than to push this judge. He had a reputation for putting up with no nonsense from anyone in his court. His words echoed in my head as we filed out of the courtroom, the weight of our sentence pressing down on me like a physical burden. I hated old people, their slow walking, their constant complaining, their weakness, the way they smelled. This was going to be pure torture. Hospice? Seriously? Chloe groaned, shoving her hands into her pockets as we stood outside the courthouse. "I'd rather scrub toilets for a week." "Tell me about it," Liam muttered, kicking at loose pebbles on the sidewalk. "Like? What are we supposed to do? Read them stories and sing nursery rhymes?" "And I am certainly not going to change diapers," he said. "I'm going to barf just thinking about it." Marco just chuckled, his usual cruel smirk firmly in place. "Hey, maybe we can at least get some good laughs out of it. Imagine all the crazy things they'll say and do. I'm ready to go see some people suffer and die." He laughed. Even though I knew we were all thinking it, the words coming from Marco made my stomach turn. We were really terrible teens, I knew this, but I didn't think we were that far gone. Hilltop Haven was worse than I imagined. The place reeked of disinfectant, combined with something sickly sweet and stale. The walls were a depressing shade of beige, and the air hung thick with the quiet sounds of labored breathing and soft, endless groans. The residents, as they were called, were worse than I could have dreamed. They were all hunched over, wrinkled and weak. Some were hooked up to machines, their skin pale, thin, and translucent. There were around 20 of them total. It was really awful. I hated it here. We were herded into a small break room by a woman who introduced herself as Nurse Karen. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Your duties are simple," she said, her voice flat. "Attend to the patient's needs. Feed them when they need to eat. Help them to the bathroom. Keep them clean and speak with them kindly and compassionately. Understood?" We all mumbled some form of agreement, our eyes glued to the floor. I could feel Marco's eyes on me, waiting to see when we'd begin our show we'd been planning. The residents didn't seem to notice us. They mostly just stared ahead, their eyes soulless and vacant, or they drifted in and out of sleep. Sarah and I were assigned to Mr. Henderson, a frail man with paper-thin skin and a permanent tremor in his hand. His eyes, clouded with cataracts, seemed to look right through both of us. "Hello, Mr. Henderson," Sarah said, her voice painfully sweet. "I'm Sarah, and this is Kane." We had been told to introduce ourselves to the patients. The old man didn't respond. He just sat there, his chest rising and falling slowly like a dying balloon. The boredom was excruciating. It was slow and quiet, and there was nothing to do but watch old people sit and struggle with simply breathing, staying alive one more minute, day in and day out. It was sad, yes, but more than that, it was completely annoying. They should die already. This is torture, I whispered to Sarah when Nurse Patty was out of earshot. I feel like running right out of the place. Sarah rolled her eyes. "Tell me about it." "I can't stand the way he smells." I nodded in agreement. The smells were the worst part for sure. And that's when it started. We started the show to entertain ourselves with whispered jokes about their wrinkles, their dentures, and their drooling. Then it escalated. We called Mr. Henderson Grandpa Poopy Pants and mocked his heavy, slow groaning. Chloe started mimicking Mrs. Abernathy's raspy cough, giggling behind her hand like no one was noticing. Marco, of course, led the pack. He started telling stories about how each of them looked dead and like zombies that were waiting to rise from their graves and eat our brains. It was cruel, it was immature, but that's what we did. We found the weak spots and started to poke at them. Just for fun, of course. The old folks didn't react, not really. They just continued to exist, oblivious, or perhaps just resigned, to their tormentors and to their fate. Hours crawled slowly by. We did as little work as possible, mostly just making sure the old people were still breathing. By the time night fell, a scary silence fell over the place. The fluorescent lights flickered and the air felt heavy, suffocating, like something wicked was coming. "I'm about ready to get out of here," I muttered to Liam, the only one of our group I could stand talking to at the moment. We were in the break room, supposed to be taking our dinner break, but the food smelled so bad and tasted so bland that none of us could stomach it. "Yeah, 2 more hours, Liam groaned. "Then we can forget this place ever existed." Everything happened at once. The lights flickered again and then plunged into complete darkness. A collective gasp filled the room, followed by a chorus of groans from the residents. Then silence, complete silence. I felt a strange tingling sensation spread through my body, a prickly, hot feeling that made my skin crawl. Then came a wave of nausea that made me stumble, followed by a strange feeling of lightness as my consciousness drifted away. Just like that, I was gone. I was out of my body, somehow. Woke up with a gasp, my heart hammering against my ribs. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. I was lying in a bed, my back aching against the hard mattress. My limbs felt heavy and weak, like they were made of lead. I tried to sit up, but found myself struggling, my muscles screaming in protest. My vision was blurry, and I could barely see. My hands, they weren't my hands. They were gnarled, wrinkled, and covered in age spots. What the hell? I looked down at my body. I was in a hospital gown, and I could see my chest, my wrinkled, saggy chest, rising and falling with shallow breaths. Panic seized me, a cold, icy grip that made it hard to breathe. This wasn't right. This wasn't me. I had to get out of this body, Sarah. I croaked, my voice a rusty old man's wheeze. A chorus of confused moans and gasps filled the room. I could hear shuffling noises and the sound of weak limbs moving against sheets. My eyes finally focused on the other beds in the room. Mr. Henderson was still there, but he looked different. He was younger, stronger, my age. I knew I was out of it because for some reason he looked just like me. He was staring right at me with wide, confused eyes. My eyes. What the hell is going on? He stammered, the words coming from what looked like my mouth. Then it hit me. A hammer blow of understanding and terror crashed into me. We had switched. We had traded bodies with the old folks, the ones we had mocked and belittled. We were trapped, old and dying, while they were young and strong again and inhabiting our bodies. The thought was too much. I wanted to scream, but my old body could only muster a weak, pained moan. "What's happening to me?" Chloe, now in Mrs. Abernathy's body, voice cried out in disbelief from another bed. We've been switched," I managed to say, my breaths coming in short, shallow gasps. "We're in their bodies and they're in ours." A wave of hysteria washed over the room as the realization hit my other friends, who had been turned old too. We were too weak to do anything. We couldn't even sit up without help. Was this supposed to be our punishment? The doors to our room burst open and in walked the former patients. Now young and strong with our bodies, I could see Liam's body with the conscience of Mr. Franklin, Sarah with the spirit of Mrs. Abernathy inside her, and Marco's body now possessed by Mr. Jones. They stood in the doorway, their faces a mixture of shock, wonder, and something else, something dark. "Oh my," Sarah said, her voice a youthful tenor. "It seems you all will finally understand our despair, our hopelessness, or pain." "This isn't funny," I cried out, my voice a weak, desperate plea that fell on deaf ears. "Change us back. Please change us back." Mr. Jones, in Marco's body, let out a booming laugh, the sound bouncing off the walls. "Change you back? Why would we do that? It's time we had some fun and played a game with you, you monsters," Chloe whimpered, weakly reaching out a hand toward the young figures. "Monsters?" Liam asked, raising an eyebrow. "Now who's being dramatic? We're merely enjoying our newfound youth, and after all, it is just a funny game to entertain ourselves, right?" The world was a blur of pain, sadness, and terror as I lay in the bed, my old blot aching with every breath. The formerly old, now young hospice patients looked down at us, their faces devoid of the pity you would expect, replaced with strange, cold amusement. They were no longer helpless victims. They were young, bold, uncaring, and in charge now. They began to walk around, admiring themselves in our new bodies. They laughed and flexed their arms and moved their legs, looking like kids with new toys. It was both funny and horrible to watch. "What are you going to do to us?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Do?" Mrs. Abernathy and Sarah's body asked, feigning innocence. "Well, we're going to do what we've always wanted to do. We are going to live in these healthy, firm, vibrant new bodies. We are going to be young again and relive our best years." I watched in horror as they began to leave the room, not even paying attention to our cries for help. They were gone, and we were helpless to stop them. The remaining hours were a nightmare. We were stuck in these broken bodies, crying out for help that would never come. We were weak and in pain, and all we could do was wait to die. The indignity of it all was crushing and inevitable. I could hear the others moaning and crying, their voices weak and cracking with age and despair. I could hear Sarah calling out for her mom, Liam asking for his dog. The reality of what was happening was finally sinking in. We were going to die a horrific death, and no one cared. I tried to move to get out of bed, but my body was too weak. I could feel my heart pounding against my chest, struggling to keep going. My breaths were coming in short, ragged gasps, and the world started to turn gray. The pain was becoming unbearable. And then I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of my vision. It wasn't one of the teens. It was something else, something dark and shadowy, its form indistinct and shifting, and it whispered a word into my ear, a word so chilling it sent a shiver down my already brittle, lifeless spine. The word was simply karma. And then everything faded to black. I felt myself slip away, my consciousness dissolving into the vast emptiness of death. I was free of the pain, but at what cost? My youth and my life had been stolen from me mercilessly, without a single thought of compassion or empathy. The sun rose on Hilltop Haven, casting long shadows across the empty hallways. The hospice home was silent, the only sound the gentle hum of the machinery that had kept these patients alive. The staff arrived for their shift, and when they walked into the resident's room, they found something strange. They found 6 old bodies lying still in their beds, every one of them showing the cold signs of death. The staff weren't surprised. They came to expect this. It was a hospice after all. Down the street, 6 young adults, laughing and talking, walked down the sidewalk, their bodies filled with endless energy and new life. They were finally free. They were finally young. And they were finally happy. They had a lifetime ahead of them, a brand new chance at life, and they were not about to waste it. The old folks had gotten their revenge, and the young teens had gotten the karma they richly deserved.
Hello, my Nightmare Obsession fans. We hope you loved this story, and were almost frightened to death, left wanting even more. If so, please share video and our channel link with friends and family, and ask them to subscribe, like, comment, and share with their friends and family too. We really want to create more nightmarish horror stories for you, so please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel now. We would really appreciate it. Thanks so much.